Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Think Big Bodybuilding Media. I'm Scott McNally, and today we talk with contest prep coach Dave Kalick. Now, I know that a lot of you guys are not only bodybuilders, but you're also coaching people too. It's been in my mindset as a coach to listen to people like Dave who have been doing this for a long time. You know, I think Dave said his first contest was in like 87 or something like that. I mean, most of us weren't even lifting in 87. So it's been in my mindset to listen to guys like Dave who have been around and done this for a long time. He came up in the 90s training out at Gold's with all those characters, and he's had the opportunity to work with a lot of elite IFBB pro bodybuilders. So we start out the show today talking about the strategies that he is using during this messed up season. You know, what is he doing with his athletes to try to get them to still, be their best when they finally have the opportunity to get back on stage? Then from there, I go to a Q&A. We have a bunch of questions that we gathered together from you guys. Some of them are fun. Some of them are a little more serious. We discuss insulin protocols. We talk about peaking strategies. We also talk about how Dave likes to combine protein. He'll take like two different protein sources and use them in the same meal. So we talk about that. We talk about a bunch more. There's a bunch of sage wisdom in this. So I hope that you learned something. And guys, if you do me a favor, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, because we have several programs coming out each week. You can stay up to date with all of our stuff. Guys, our programming is brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. You could use our code ADVICES for some additional savings. That helps to support the show. Plus, they've got high quality, third-party tested supplements. You can't beat them. Plus, we're also sponsored by Azoth. Get Azoth.com, or you can go to our Amazon link in the show notes. Honestly, the best nootropic that I've ever used. If you can't tell, I'm on the ball right now because I took my Azoth. Check them out, guys. Get more shit done each day. Let's get to the program. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Think Big Bodybuilding Media and Advices Radio. Up next, we've got with us Coach Dave Kalick. What's up, brother? How you been?
Brother, thanks for having me on again.
Dude, pleasure as always, man. For anybody who is just tuning in to Think Big and hasn't listened to all the Advices podcasts, Dave's been with us a bunch of times. Bodybuilder from back in the day. Now you've been coaching for quite a long time, man. You're pretty well known as a West Coast coach. I say West Coast coach, not like you just coach guys on the West Coast, but you're out of the West Coast, which I think is, I think there's still some prestige to being like California bodybuilder. I don't know. I want to think there is. What do you think?
I mean, like if you walked into Gold's Gym in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, you could feel the energy in there. You can cut it with a knife, Yeah. And now being more corporate, whatever. I mean, it's still the Mecca. And it's still, a lot of photo shoots are done there, and, it's still definitely a hub, if you will, for bodybuilders or people coming to town. And it's still the Mecca, but I think there's some prestige, being involved on the West Coast with bodybuilding. But yeah, it's, again, there's the East Coast Mecca, and then there's the Mile High Mecca. So, there's definitely good bodybuilding hotspots around the country. But yeah, I think still Venice or, the West Coast still kind of. Yeah.
I had fun. I came out there to do a show 2 years ago now, and Dave came out, guys. He hung out with me for a little while at Gold's. And you were like the president. You were like the mayor of bodybuilding or something. When we walked in, everybody was just like, "Oh, hey!" Everybody knew you, first of all, Dave, there, and then
I'm an old fucker.
Everybody knew you though, and you used to go out there on a regular basis. Obviously, we're kind of everything's shut down, right now with the pandemic and all, but. Were you were still heading out there on a semi-regular basis, a couple times a week or something?
Yeah, like the last couple of years, I'll go, just twice a week. I would certainly if a client comes into town, and I wanted to work with him or her for a couple of days, then we would set up camp down there.
Yeah.
And we would train for the week. There's times I'll go down there, every day for a week, just so, got a lot of stuff done and just get in the environment and see people, see friends. There's some periods of time where I won't go in there just periodically, maybe once or twice a week or once every other week. But generally speaking, when the season picks up, I'm in there more often.
Yeah. And you head out to Armbrust a lot, I know. Working with Dorian Haywood.
Like every 6 or 8 weeks, go out there, work with Adam. Adam Young, Dorian Haywood. Adam, for you guys don't know, Adam's my 212 guy. Dorian's an open guy that I have. There's also Haley McGrath. She's IFBB women's bodybuilding.
Is she out of there too?
She's crazy. Yeah, she's crazy. She lives out there.
Yeah.
Crazy physique. And she was, all three of them are, fingers crossed, getting ready for the Wings of Strength series of shows that would, fingers crossed, start with Chicago, July 4th weekend, fingers crossed. And then there's a string of, Wings of Strength shows through August, and then concluding with, fingers crossed, New York Pro September 5th.
All right.
And it's funny because all these shows at the end now, including Puerto Rico, which is one of the same weekends in August, these are all Wings of Strength shows.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the Olympia's Wings of Strength. So.
Yeah. Dude, I got to say, man, Dorian's been looking crazy. The pictures I've seen. Like, honestly, last year, you guys made, I think you guys made like a real big impression, in the IFBB. This year, I feel like, to me, I felt like a lot of people were waiting to see, like, okay, what's he going to do this year now? Like, I think last year set him up for a lot. I think I have a picture here I'll throw up from him last year. This is him. This is that shot of him doing a most muscular, standing on his own there. When's that from?
This is from Indie Pro from last year.
Okay. Yeah, dude, he looked incredible, man. I mean, he's just come so far. How long ago did he turn pro now?
So he turned pro, this is 2017 Nationals.
Okay. And how much more mass is he carrying now on stage? Obviously, I don't know.
He's progressed, and this attributes to his genetics, because we all know that the genetic predisposition dictates, right?
Yeah.
And the work ethic, of course. So when I met him, he had just come off stage from North Americans. He was, I think, like 213 pounds at that point.
Okay.
And started working together. And then the following week, then he did the USA, got second at the USA, got third at North Americans, and then finally the pro card was in Nationals in Miami in November. So he went from, in whatever, 16 months, whatever, he went, well, less, because at the USA he was pretty much the same weight. The Nationals, he was a couple pounds, he was growing throughout that season too. But he went from a stage weight of, let's say, 213 to 232.
Okay.
In the pro 233 last year. He was on stage in the 240s.
No kidding, man.
He did, out of nowhere, it's almost like a Ronnie Coleman thing. You know how Ronnie in his late 30s really starting to come to fruition, his mass and all that size.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. Like, this off season was the year where he just exploded.
Yeah.
And he's just put on just out of nowhere. He really literally, without even exaggerating, probably put on about 11 pounds of raw tissue this last year.
I mean, for like a newbie,
it's just
that would be great. That would be fantastic for someone who was like new to the sport, but for someone who's been around,
right.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's it's
just
crazy.
One of those years I've seen over the years. Been doing this since 1986. Yeah, I'm fucking old. When you see a bodybuilder get into a groove, it's kind of cool, because, it's bodybuilding, right? And good bodybuilders are supposed to progress. If you have good genetics and the work ethic is there and the nutrition's there and the pharmacology is there, you should progress. Bodybuilders get better. Good bodybuilders get better. He got better.
Yeah.
Again, the work ethic. Here, you keep in mind, this is someone who the training intensity is just, through the roof. I could literally throw the kitchen sink at him. I can honestly say he's the only guy that hasn't puked doing legs with me.
No kidding.
Can't get him. I've tried. Don't get me wrong. I've been an evil motherfucker training, the workouts. But yeah, that's just nothing but good old fashioned elbow grease, hard work, predisposed genetics, and nothing crazy with drugs. Standard, but pounding the food, pounding the weights, and having the genetics for all that to come to fruition.
That's freaking badass,
and hence this
man.
last year, it's just crazy how much he's gotten bigger.
That is cool. I remember you had coached Sean Roden in the past. I think I've got a picture of him around here somewhere too, back when you coached him. I got to dig that up still, but here it is. I pulled this off of your Instagram. I think that he looked fantastic at the Olympia when he won. I thought that was a freaking badass look. But I feel like they hadn't matched that. Like it took that long to get back to that. What year was this picture?
To get back to this kind of conditioning?
Yeah.
So this was when Sean and I worked together. We qualified him for the 2011 Olympia.
Okay.
That was his first Olympia. And then this picture here is actually from the Arnold Classic 4 months later.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that was a badass shot, man. I just figured I'd kind of bring up, some of the people you've worked with, some of the stuff you've done, because I know you don't do you're not a guy who's out there, like you don't do a ton of podcasts. You're not like you're the last person, like in your social media, you're not just like running around bragging about the stuff that you do. You just kind of freaking do it, man.
No, I mean, I'm a pretty down to earth guy. I like, as you know, I'm a big metal fan. I like smoking pot, listening to metal, going to metal shows, and dogs and animals, and that's my thing. Call me a simple man.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. Coaching is a passion for me. I'm lucky because again, I'm fortunate to have real estate and other businesses and investments, so I'm able to, really enjoy coaching.
Yeah.
I purposely I don't try to have a big factory of coaching and copy and paste and same protocols for everybody. I really like to call my athletes on the phone, and work through issues.
That's what I've heard, man. I've heard some of your guys, you're talking to them sometimes a daily basis, which you couldn't do that with 100 clients, No.
And if we're inside the red zone before a show, especially maybe I want to call the next day and say, hey, is the avocado combined with the salmon in meal 3 giving you gas like it was, just working through food issues, working through stuff because, every week of prep, you got to make it productive, and some, believe it or not, some bodybuilders, even some high level ones, if there's issues with digestion or things, some people just keep quiet unless you, so I like hearing, it's good to talk on the phone and get feedback and to game plan,
So like I was saying, Dorian is, everybody I think is making some really good progress, but Dorian especially has stood out to me. I know you guys have had a big year planned. What's happening right now? I mean, we're all dealing with just everything's really messed up, man. And a lot of us can't even get to gyms. Food is even kind of scarce at certain points. So how's he doing right now? What's he got going on?
Well, basically initially, so him and Adam originally were going to do Indy Pro, which was originally May 9th. And obviously, that was a wash. Yeah. And then we set the sights on Chicago Pro, which is July 4th weekend, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So the tricky part was, it's not like starting and stopping a prep. The idea is, let's say, of course, when the show was canceled on May 9th and we were thinking about July 4th weekend, of course, certain, protocols of chems were pulled out and, long esters, let's say, reintroduced for a period of time.
Okay.
Caloric surplus, just basically a holding pattern, not blowing up and swelling up and putting up, you have to stay within striking distance.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what we did. So we just moved everything ahead accordingly. So now 9 weeks out from today, presumably, would be Chicago Pro for him and Dorian and Haley, her as well. Haley was going to do, she's IFBB female. She was going to originally do Linda Murray's show April. That was canceled. So same thing for her, having to, just make adjustments. The idea is there's adrenal integrity.
Yeah.
There's estradiol control. There's adrenals. There's so many variables that you want to keep the integrity of moving forward. We don't want big estradiol rebounds or things of that nature. So it's just a controlled process of there again, holding pattern. And then, now let's say, next week at 8 weeks out, we would start to flip switches.
Start pushing a little bit more again. That makes sense. So you kind of pulled.
So it's more cardiac, caloric, deficit and things of that nature. Okay. More cardio.
So basically, just kind of you were pulling back in a lot of ways, slowing it down, and probably still making progress, I guess. But at the same time,
the thing is, once someone like that, keep in mind what's kind of really cool about Dorian's prepping right now is that because he did put on all that muscle, putting him in a caloric deficit, he's actually his calories are way higher. His caloric deficit now would be like a caloric surplus prior to that. You know what I mean? He's eating a lot of fucking food. And even during this holding pattern, because he was so metabolically efficient, because we dug into the hole. We were digging into the hole for May 9th. So then we had a kind of cool rebound metabolically and everything like that from a sensitivity standpoint. So even though when we ramped up calories, not like, cheat meals every day and, cranking it, not like that, but I mean, definitely like more of a surplus, he's continually been getting leaner, even in this higher calorie structure, again, because of the metabolic efficiency they feel that he has from the muscle that he put on in the off season.
Let me ask you something just in general. I know what you're talking about. When you said digging into the hole, I feel like, with the people I work with, I've seen it takes a period of time of dieting and getting depleted before you can say really make use of a cheat meal or really make use of a carb up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you can't. Like, the thing is like this, is that, very often when people starting prep, let's say, as you probably have some people come to you just wanting to prep, forgetting the off season. It's like, hey, I have a show in 12 weeks. Let's get ready.
Yeah.
The first thing is, a lot of people are very glucose intolerant, in the initial phases, and you throw in a cheat meal too early. A, you'll slow down the mechanism of what you're trying to do, and B, you'll store it, because it's kind of tricky, because in someone like that, when you let's say you start dieting someone and they're in a deficit, and then if you throw in a cheat meal too early, that's not going to be a metabolically activating cheat meal. That's going to be more of a storage cheat meal, because here you are in a deficit, your body's like, fuck, there's storage. And again, if you're not glucose tolerant after several weeks of prep and you do it, if your sensitivity is not there, it's not going to be a productive cheat meal. So you definitely, as you're saying, you want to wait till the conveyor belt is moving along very quickly.
Yeah.
Cheat meal is supposed to be where you're like, the next day you're like hungrier and actually a pound or two lighter, let's say, on the scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you wake up the next day in a cheat meal and you're blown up and you're swollen, your stomach's, you're sluggish, you don't have the sensitivity and you're not ready for the cheat meal. Back off for several weeks before you introduce it. It's not engraved in stone. You need one anyway. As some guys would really I have some guys, I have more keto guys, I have more nutrient partition guys where, carbs, fats, and protein are more even. And I have, high carb people that are more lower in fats and lower, anyway, those kind of people, they don't need as much of a cheat meal. There's already a lot of spiking with carbs and stuff,
Yeah. How do you go about figuring that out? You said there's, various different types of diets or people that respond better to keto, for instance. What do you start? Because here's what I do. I'll tell you, and tell me if you do anything like something similar. I'll start with everything, carbs, proteins, and fats. And a lot of times I'll try to, remove carbs or remove fats, first and see if they do better. So, but, then if they don't, then we go the other direction. But what are some of the things you're looking for?
Yeah, a lot of times you could tell, I could look at pictures and I could say, okay, if this person did an A1C test for fasted glucose, it's going to be elevated. You could just tell. Yeah. A lot of times I'll have that done too. So, but
how can you just tell? What do you mean? Because here's the thing, and this is what I'm getting at. I know I'm putting you on the spot here. This is kind of the art of bodybuilding. I know when you say you can just tell. I'm kind of
let me specify. I guess sometimes let me answer in a different way. So I can look at someone and tell okay, this guy looks estrogenic. Either his estradiol is to the roof, or the storage, the acknowledgement of estradiol in those tissues is there's a lot of acknowledgement of it, and they just look estrogenic. There's that fluffy look. More of the love handle. Usually you'll see the lower body will be the fat was more distributed lower body, especially glute and stuff like that, legs. You've seen as well as I do. See people that could have lean abs, but their ass is fat. Or vice versa. So let's say with cortisol, a lot of times with cortisol, you'll see that lower body fat, storage, mid visceral kind of storage. I see a lot, with cortisol levels are elevated, and you see the same kind of storage, I think, with glucose intolerance. There's just certain, I can't explain it. It's just
okay. That's all right.
So they just don't look carb sensitive. They just look, and usually 9 out of 10 times that'll be the case. But I'll start off with, partition foods, as you're saying, carbs, proteins, fats, and then we'll play around, remove one of the energy sources, and a lot of times people will generally fare, most people need to have a lower carb structure when they diet.
Okay.
But it does take some figuring out. Some people thrive on keto.
Yeah.
Some people need an occasional like gluconeogenic reset where, like if your protein counts are too high, you're not truly in keto. A lot of people think, I don't know if a lot of listeners might think this too, just by removing carbs, it doesn't mean you're in keto. I mean, if your protein counts are too high, you're going to be gluconeogenic. In other words, you're going to get a glucose drip from the protein's going to convert. Yeah. You reach ketogenesis by having a lower protein structure and a higher fat ratio. That's how it's done, But with bodybuilding, it's, these are big, there's a lot more muscle. It's not like an average, like Atkins is like the opposite extreme where people are just eating like, pork rinds and all, But bodybuilders do need a higher amount of, so it's not really truly keto. As a matter of fact, it's kind of like you're kind of trickling back and forth between gluconeogenesis and ketogenesis if protein counts are pretty high. But I think that's what's very effective for getting shredded, But sometimes, like with a high carb diet, or sometimes I'll just do a gluconeogenic day or two in a row. Like in other words, where just all the carbs, all the fats are removed, and it's just protein counts.
Okay. Huh. All right. Yeah.
And carb day following that or something.
Yeah, and like I said too, or I was saying a minute ago, it was like I feel that in podcasting, people are looking for information. But sometimes it's not like something where you can just, it's not like a series of things that like boxes that you're trying to check when you're analyzing someone's physique. For you, it's a level of experience and then an intuition. And I think that intuition, it's something that you can't really describe that on a podcast so much, but you can just see it and
Yeah, it's a feel. Like, I mean, a lot of it has to do with experience. I mean, keep in mind, I did my first teenage show in 1986. I've seen all the generations of all the different bodybuilders, all the different Olympias and all that stuff. And it's just from seeing over and over and over and over again. And also just having like, you just look at someone and being like, okay, this is a lower carb person. This person will thrive on keto. And just generally speaking, it usually pans out that way. Well, I mean, again, nothing's engraved in stone and anything's subject to change.
What worked for you best?
When I was competing?
Yeah.
I was more, I did really well, like on carb cycling. I did well on, gluconeogenic patterns to reset. I did good on, keto for a couple of days and then having like a, carb pattern I did well on moving around a lot all over the place through those spectrums.
Okay.
Sometimes I'd have high carb segments, sometimes, but keep in mind, I mean, I wasn't, I started becoming, I think towards the end when I tried coming back doing, masters nationals and stuff like that, I think when you try coaching yourself, a lot of times you start, second guessing things, whatever, because it's yourself, So.
Yeah. You feel like you could have done better if you had turned to somebody else at that point, just to turn the reins over. Yeah.
Of course.
Right on. Hey, what's up, guys? Scott here, and I want to take a really brief pause from this episode to shout out our new great sponsor, Azoth. Now, first of all, guys, I want to say that I only bring in companies that I truly, truly do believe in. I believe in TrueNutrition.com, and I believe in GetAzoth.com. This is a total nootropic product. They've sponsored BNR, Bodybuilders Radio, for a number of years now. I'm super familiar with it. I've watched the company grow, and I've watched Brady do great things with it. And listen, here's my story. In all honesty, I feel like I fucked up in the early part of my life, and I didn't get the things done that I should have done earlier on. And I'm trying to make up for that now, honestly. I'm trying to be the best person I can and help people and, try to put a retirement together for myself. I'm totally self-employed between podcasting full time and nutrition coaching. My life is pretty demanding, and that's the way that I want to live it. I want to get the most I can out of life, and I want to have fun doing it. And if you can't tell, guys, I am having a lot of fun with this. By the way, I'm grateful for you guys listening and watching all the shows. Anyway, getazoth.com. I feel that my attention and my focus is increased when I use this. At the same time, I don't get the anxiety that goes along with a lot of stimulants. If you haven't tried a nootropic, this is the place that I would suggest going. Start out with these guys and let me know what you think. I've got links in the show descriptions, and if you haven't tried it, Brady even has an option to get a bottle for free. So it'll be no cost to you. You can see what it's all about. Either way, guys, check out getazoth.com and let me know what you think, because I found that it's a fantastic product.
Hey guys, why are you using sports nutrition that was designed for someone else? At TrueNutrition.com, they offer the world's largest selection of quality protein powders, and they let you design your own custom blend from a variety of powders, flavors, boosts, and packaging options, like the Team Skip blend, for instance. That's over 20 billion possible combinations to create a protein powder tailored to your diet, your goals, your tastes, and your budget. TrueNutrition.com also offers the ability to create delicious custom oatmeal blends, and they're third-party tested, proving that all their supplements are ensured to have the highest level of quality and value. Don't be a sucker and pay for fancy packaging and gimmicks. Discover the source that bodybuilders trust and stop using mass-produced nutrition that wasn't designed for you. TrueNutrition.com, and use our code ADVICES at checkout to let them know that you support the shows.
I got a bunch of questions here. We have some from over at the Advices board, and I have some I asked over on Instagram. I'm going to start with insulin protocol. Somebody asked about insulin, and I wanted to jump off with that because, we've done, I can't even count how many podcasts now, Dave, but one of the topics that we had planned at one point on doing like a whole podcast dedicated to insulin, and it didn't happen because we had so many other things to talk about. But in general, can you tell us about your thoughts on insulin? Because I've heard so many different theories and ideas on the way people think you should use it.
I mean, so first of all, I'm not saying insulin is the holy grail, but when you combine insulin with growth hormone, it is very, very effective. And that it is a huge change. Now that being said, I'm not a 60 IUs of insulin a day, running Lantus in the background, pre-workout insulin where you're jamming as much intra-workout carbs as possible to prevent yourself from getting hypoglycemic. And I'm all about the post-workout window period for using insulin. Okay. And because that's where the delivery needs to happen. I think when you're training, this is just my opinion, but I think when you're training, you shouldn't be, trying to stabilize blood sugar while you're training. There's a lot of great intra-workout carbs and all that stuff, and things that will stabilize it. But then again, I don't believe your belly should be filled with glucose or any other types of carbs while you're training. I think you should be empty, and then again, that messaging should be done afterward. Now, also, when insulin's used, I'm not a big believer in using 20, 30 units at a time. I mean, I think you can get you get more bang for your buck, so to speak, if you're using insulin for lower dosing protocol over a longer duration of time. For example, I'm really big on using Humulin R in the morning with growth hormone. Okay. Because to me, if you use growth hormone with insulin, you're going to get a really good IGF, release from your liver. That just, that's what it does. And I think that with Humulin R, which is kind of cool about it, a lot of people are very much into the quick acting insulin, and it has its place. But I mean, to me, Humulin R you're going to build more muscle in Humulin R simply because of the duration of the half-life. I mean, Humulin R is robust in your system for about 6 hours, and it has 2 peaks. Okay. So you can actually get the aspect of having insulin in your system going to the workout and having it complement the growth hormone you're taking in the morning because of the half-life. Let's say you wake up in the morning, you take, you take 4 IUs of GH, and you take 6 or 7 IUs of Humulin R. Yeah. So you're going to have that in your system for 6 hours with 2 peaks. And if you were to train in that window period, you're going to have the insulin in your system. Sure. And you're going to have your system after you train. So you're doing that. So I'll either go back and forth. A lot of times I'll go back and forth from that. And then sometimes I'll shift where I actually use Humalog instead of Humulin R. I'll use the Humalog post. Okay. And I find that with the Humalog, you can actually use more IUs with the Humalog. Really? But again, I wouldn't even breach 10 IUs of Humalog. I would rather use it for a long, long, long period of time because what happens is it's there's a point of diminished returns. I mean, if you're eating a lot of carbs and you have an insulin protocol, what's cool is that it gives your pancreas kind of a rest. Yeah. But keep in mind that if you bang out too much insulin with too much carbs after a while, there's a hormone called glucagon that's released. And glucagon is a hormone that lowers insulin. So if you have high insulin, your glucagon has to lower. Then insulin spiking, you're going to fry out the beta receptors in your pancreas. And then you'll lose sensitivity, and then you're fucked. Okay. And that's when you start seeing these guys with the thickening waist, the visceral fat, all that stuff. That's from losing sensitivity to insulin and then continuing to use it.
Oh, no.
That's where that stuff comes from. And then when there's androgen abuse, using 4 grams a week of tests or whatever, that visceral fat will then become even more stubborn, and then becomes more of a daunting task when dieting to try to remove it. And I think that's where you see guys that are really, really, really huge sometimes. They're walking around, they're just swollen. They look like their inflammatory markers are through the roof, and they look like they're walking around with a blood pressure of 190 over 120. Those are the guys you're going to see losing muscle dieting down, because all that stuff is just so fucking stubborn because of the clusterfuck that you've established leading into that. You know, I was saying, you know, the idea is to, you know, you want to get bigger and bigger for each show, you know, while retaining conditioning or getting more condition. It is bodybuilding, right? We want to keep progressing. So I was saying sometimes one needs to be lighter on the scale in the off season to actually be heavier on the scale the day of the show. Because the days of walking around all swollen where you bend down and tie your shoes and you're out of breath, to me is counterproductive. There might be one good off season. Everyone should do one off season where they just get really sloppy heavy. Like, I think there is something to that, because then, you know, it sticks. But after a while, you will lose your sensitivity for everything we're talking about, and it'll be harder and harder to get leaner. And then what happens when you have all that stubborn visceral fat? You got to there's more cardio needed, maybe more T3, maybe more depletion, you know. And then you're. I'm not saying you be catabolic, because it's very hard to lose tissue when you're taking, you know, steroids, growth hormone. There's resistance training, and there's all this protein. But you're certainly at the very least going to have a hard time retaining the tissue, right? And then at the end, you know, a lot of times people have to go into a hole for a long period of time to burn off all that shit off. And then at the end, you try to like come back up, and then you're in a hole for so long. I mean, shit, then at that point, it takes 2 days just to fill up your hepatic glycogen in your liver, let alone getting glycogen in your muscles, you know?
Yeah.
That's why you see these guys at the end, they'll be carbing at the end, 1,000 grams of carbs, and they're just getting sweaty from it, bloated stomach, not digesting the food because they're drying out and, you know, using a diuretic, and it's a fucked up look on stage.
Yeah. You know what I've really leaned toward doing is, obviously, you know, if you can get somebody in shape early, that's to their benefit. Sure. But if you can get them like 3, even 4 weeks early and lower that cardio down and build that food back up, you know?
Nothing better than that scenario, because this is one thing I think we could do a whole show on. Guys, be ready early, because if you're chasing conditioning at the end, here's what I'm seeing too, and then this kind of is in the same thing. This peak week. Yeah. Okay, it's peak week, got to deplete, load, do this. You're rolling the fucking dice. Yeah. You know, you might pull off a better look. You're better off, as you're saying, being ready 3 weeks out, coasting into the show. God forbid you back off things like cardio. Yeah. God forbid you start lowering T3. God forbid you can start progressively increasing calories going into the show, where the last week, I like to look at it now as like the last week is just another week of getting better. Yeah. Another week of prep.
Hey, I've got a picture here of...
How many listeners out there have been like, fuck, man, the way I looked 5 days after the show, I wasn't even loaded or anything. I was still drinking water and sodium is normal, and that look looks crazy. To me, if you could just retain that look, that's peak.
Listen, you know? I got a shot here from the Indy of Dorian and Luke standing next to each other. This is a freaking great look for Dorian. He looks so nasty hard here. I mean, and what can you tell me a little bit about this prep and about that? Let's go to that peak week. You know, what did you guys have to do? Was he this hard a week out, or was he close to this? Or, you know, explain to me a little bit more about that last week.
Yeah, he was, as far as like body fat level.
Yeah.
3 weeks out was pretty much, that's, you know, where he was at. So, you know, at that point in time, then we just kept kind of doing what we were doing. I mean, we would, you know, we had fluctuations. What we did at that point, last couple of weeks, what we were able to do is where we would do, you know, earlier in the week, we would be more of a deficit. Yeah. And then here's what's kind of cool about getting ready early is you have this kind of flexibility. So we would just, early in the week, he'd be more of a deficit. And then towards the last 3 days of the week, his calories would come up. And he would, we would stabilize being in the hole from earlier in the week, and B, we would get a whole different way of tightening up and getting fat loss, because all of a sudden we were throwing in extra calories the last couple of days. And metabolically, he's challenged.
Yeah.
There's different ways of triggering fat loss or metabolism, you know. So he was more metabolically efficient when we would kick in, you know, more calories the last couple of days at the end of the week. You know, his metabolism spike. Not unlike when you do a cheat meal, and let's say if it's done correctly and timed correctly, you get like a pound or two lighter the next day. Let's say, Same thing. Sometimes during that prep, he would actually be lighter on the scale the day after the 3 days of high days compared to, do you see what I mean? The lower days. So, but I mean, we definitely did we did a drying out protocol. I mean, at the end, it was a peak week in the sense that, we shot for extreme dryness.
Okay. But at the same time, though,
it's more so water manipulation, electrolyte manipulation, more so than like, you know, depleting and loading and things of that nature.
Yeah. And
like goal at the end.
Well, I'm thinking,
estradiol, you know, as low as possible the last 2 weeks. That's another thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess just what I'm thinking too. One of the big things I wanted to hit on that strikes me is you were just repeating the same thing you'd done every week as far as loading, is what it sounds like. In the early part of the week, there's less food, and then in the later part, you're filling them up. And so by the time you get to the show, you already have seen this happen a number of times. You took the guesswork out of it.
Right. So his body was already primed for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, that's if you're going to do stuff last week, at least, I'm not saying like, you know, some people do like they do trial runs or whatever, but it's kind of that and the same. I mean, you know, last week, again, it's just some people like what we used to called voodoo stuff at the end, where you just, okay, you know, it's, you know, 3 shakes of a lamb. It's, you know, eye of newt, you know, wing of bat. And some people just think, okay, you know, it's peak week, so you have to do it. It's not engraved in stone.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, keep in mind, like the last couple of days, I mean, people don't realize it, but, you know, there's so many moving parts. I mean, even just the stress of landing in the city, getting off the plane, you know, waiting for the luggage, you know, Uber, like getting settled into the Airbnb or the hotel room, going shopping for food. Just that alone, just all the stress in that one day is going to kind of throw things off, you know? And then like, I mean, people are you can be cool as a cucumber, but in the background, you know that you're leading into an event, and there's cortisol. Like, you know, it's no matter what, it's not a normal week. You know, you're out of your environment, whatever. I mean, some people, as soon as the pan goes on, there's like a fight or flight. There's a Pavlovian dog. Some people, as soon as they smell that protan, they start getting nervous and they start, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just the last week. My point is that the last week you're going to have a lot of variables that are out of your control anyway. So you might as well just stay stable. So yeah, you're right. He was primed for that the last week, because we were doing that as our theme. And then, you know, the only thing that we did differently though was that the last like 36 hours, we did pull out more of the dense food, because Dorian looks best when his stomach is really pulled in and he's like digested a lot of the denser foods, you know? So what we do is like for the first like 2 days of it, you know, he'll be more denser foods, you know, more grass-fed beef, more salmon, more avocado, more almond butter, more like, you know, density of food, right?
Heavier, yeah.
Again, those foods are harder to break down. So, you know, you don't want to go on stage. A lot of guys go on stage where they're just filled with food. You know, ascending, descending, transverse colons all filled with feces, and you're up there in your stomach and you're not digesting food and you're, you know, so it's really good to have. I like his best look is when his stomach again is very empty. So the last like 36 hours, we were doing basically like just really quick absorbing foods, stimulation foods. You know, white fish with cream of rice, foods that would just rip through him. Where he would eat a meal and 20 minutes later he was starving. You know, we wanted the conveyor belt to rip right through him at the end. He was processing really well. Now keep in mind the 2 days prior to that we had a lot of food density going into it, so he was already volumized from the food density for the 2 days prior to that. And then we switched more towards, we started pulling out the meat, you know, the avocado, the almond butter, the yams, the heavier, denser foods. And we opted more towards, you know, white fish, of course, simulates a lot easier than, let's say, beef or chicken or, you know, stuff like that. So we went for that. And of course, you know, cream of rice being granulated and stuff, it's so easy to pick up and absorb. And for fats, you know, we had lower fats just in general the last 36 hours, but we would use the olive oil instead of the almond butter and the avocado.
Yeah, that's super
the
fast.
Olive oil is just, to me, this olive oil is my favorite fat. I like using the off season and pre-contest. To me, it's just gasoline, you know.
Yeah.
It's my favorite fat to use.
Huh? I didn't know that.
That's what we did last week, and then we did focus on. We focus on, you know, on dryness. I mean, there was a diuretic protocol. I mean, there was water manipulation. But, we made sure for Indy, though, one cool effect we did get, speaking of order manipulation, was we made sure, like, I had him, when he woke up the day prior to it, 6 a.m, I had him drink, like, almost a whole gallon right then,
Really?
And then we slowed it down. There was some degree of sodium depletion, like the 2/3 of the day on Friday, the day before. And so I wanted all the water to roll through his almost sodium-free environment. When we cut out the water, several hours later, we reintroduced sodium towards the end of the day.
Oh, I see.
Dry him out even further.
Yeah.
And then, we had placed, there was diazide.
Okay. So just to wrap up the thoughts on insulin, because we kind of segued from that into
of course, it's me
into peak. I figured don't apologize. I figure the questions are just there to kind of carry the conversation. But to wrap that up though, what do you think about like long-term use? Is this something, because I've seen some of the old protocols, guys would use insulin for 3 weeks on, then 3 weeks off. I've seen more modern protocols where guys will just use it, say, on days that they train a weak body part. What are your thoughts on how you would break down insulin use?
There's a lot of different ways of using insulin. Like, for example, for prep, let's say, for example, when the athlete's really, really lean, then let's say once a week, let's say there's a high carb day schedule. So I will a lot of times schedule an insulin day periodically during the prep, once or twice a week, for that reason.
Okay.
Not because we're trying to grow a weak body part, but just to, again, give the pancreas a chill and to get a really cool effect from, the whole matching the sensitivity and keeping one sensitive.
Yeah.
So, I've had people use, let's say, insulin on just leg day, where they would use it post-workout, and then when they wake up the next day and their legs are really, really sore, I would want that recovery during that window period, and I would have insulin the following morning as well.
Okay.
I've done the 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I've done, the 2 days on, 1 day off. The idea is that with insulin, you have to keep ahead of losing sensitivity. And again,
yeah,
if you use too much insulin with too many carbs, you will lose sensitivity. And where do you go from there?
Yeah. Then what do you got to do? You just have to back off, I assume. Back off of carbs and everything?
Yeah. Insulin's exactly. You have to reset. Insulin, don't get me wrong, it is very productive and it's a useful tool. But again, it's if you use too much of it, I know it doesn't sound very sexy, and I know this is a very generic 101 answer, but if you use too much of it for too long of a period of time, it'll kick in the ass. You won't build any more from it. When you lose sensitivity, you'll just start storing fat, and the IGF acknowledgement in your muscle tissue will diminish, and you won't grow anymore. You'll just get more stubborn visceral fat. You're fucked.
All right. Let's see here. We've got a few cool ones.
You guys, by the way, I took a pretty substantial, large hit of sativa dominant hybrid about half an hour prior to the show. So if I'm rambling, my apologies. I'm sorry. I'm known for that. My apologies.
That's all right.
I have 4 or 5 brain cells left from everything I did when I was younger. So sometimes when I'm stoned, sometimes it doesn't help. So
you're right on track so far. You're right on track so far. But I will add, I expected nothing less. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I got a fun one we'll throw in here. This is from Steve. He says, and you're going to have to explain who each of these guys are first, because I don't know if all of our listeners will know. Who is the ultimate king of extreme? Steve Mahalik or Benny Pata?
Close. Both of these guys are animals. Steve Michalik, rest in peace. So Benny Pata, you guys understand. So this guy was he was a top amateur. He was a light heavyweight, and he would literally go on stage and just like go crazy on these posing routines. And his quote, verbatim quote, was like, "When I'm up there, I want to try to have a fucking hemorrhage." And I think Peter McGuff. I mean, there's a lot of guys who've known this. Sean Ray's known about him. He would like crab into most musculars and like hold his breath in. He would like induce a nosebleed.
You're kidding.
I mean, this guy's blood pressure, like he walked around looking like a peeled beet,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, fucking, he just looked like he was just dying, But he would go up there and like, rah, and he would like, people would get a nosebleed if they're deadlifting, whatever. So he would encourage it on stage.
Yeah.
Rumor has it that he would actually like backstage, he would like pick his nose, like try to like cut his
get it started.
blood would flow. Not unlike the wrestlers, like they were kind of like little cuts of the razor blades. Right. Who knows? But yeah, he was very intense. But Steve Mitchell, so this is back in New Jersey, and I come from back east, and I'm just gonna tell you right now, the intensity of back east bodybuilding. Okay, so the West Coast might be like whatever, the Mecca, whatever. But as far as intensity and real hardcore bodybuilding, I'm sorry, it's back east. I grew up in that, and so Steve Mitchell was known for 3-hour leg workouts, burpees in between sets, walking lunges in the blistering heat outside, for like 90 minutes straight. Just crazy workouts, just high volume.
He had a name for it too, didn't he? It was like was it intensity?
Yeah, some of that where he would belittle you if he didn't complete all this. Yeah, it was a real thing, and some guys would get hurt.
Yeah.
Say you fucking pussy, get up, But he just epitomized back east bodybuilding, and that's bodybuilding. I think they should have a shrine. Steve, our buddy Steve, who asked the question, he'll agree. There should be a shrine for Steve Mitchell, because, he did pioneer. He's one of the guys that definitely did pioneer the aspects of intensity in bodybuilding.
Yeah, I thought he had that was the name of his training. Insanity. That's what it was.
Insanity,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Insanity training.
It was. Again, it's just crazy. They would just squat for 2 hours in a row. Let's say, just put 315 in the bar and just squat for 3 hours.
That's just nuts, man.
It's crazy shit. Yeah.
There was a time I would have thought that would have been the thing to do. That's what I needed to do to obviously the more you train, the harder you train, the more you grow. I feel like looking at that now, though, I'm like, oh God, that would just destroy me. That would not build muscle for me personally.
Yeah, there's a point. And it's actually he would look very cortisoled out. As a matter of fact, there's pictures of him training where he has that deer in the headlight look, where he just looks like that overtrained. But they thought at that point, more was better.
Yeah.
But it was too much volume.
No, I didn't know. What's his name? Benny Popa? Was that it?
Benny Pata, yeah.
Pata. Okay, yeah, I didn't know him. So you were telling me about him here. This is the first I had heard about him, but it reminds me. So I had worked with a guy here in Michigan on some posing last time I competed, and he had suggested me to do something I had never done before, and that was to basically hold my breath and do a Valsalva maneuver while I was hitting my most muscular. And it does. It pushed it would push those veins all out of my face and out of my neck.
Yeah, traps and everything up the chest. Yeah.
I ddid feel every time though, especially because I was feeling weak by the end of the prep. You know what I mean? You start feeling that real light feeling where you have to stand up slowly. Your training is kind of off. And just a real hard, intense maneuver like that, it'd make me feel lightheaded. I was afraid I was going to pass out on stage. But do you know guys that do that? Because I've been doing this for a long time, and I had never thought to do that.
When we're growing up, we're taught to pose where you side chest, you want to hold the air in, because it keeps you higher and stuff like that. But there's a degree of course, you see more surface vascularity. But I don't think to do that on every pose.
No, he mostly said the most muscular.
Yeah,
to hit that press out, You're kind of doing a Valsalva maneuver, holding your breath and pressing out, and I just remember all my face would turn red and all the veins in my neck would start coming out. It was disgusting.
Well, he would do that, but on steroids. He was probably holding his breath just walking out on stage just to get that effect. I remember when he would walk out, he would just right away the facial expressions, and he looked like a gargoyle. It was a trip to see it. This is crazy.
I'll see if I can find some video.
I don't know if he's. To tell you the truth, I wonder if you could even just Google it as we speak, if he's even alive.
I don't know. Let me see.
He strikes. No offense, but he strikes me as someone who wasn't very healthy.
Yeah. No, I'd imagine.
Exactly, the fit fam lifestyle. So
I'll look it up here in a minute, though.
You're purposely trying to hemorrhage on stage.
Yeah. So who do you think is more intense out of the two of them? If you had to pick.
I gotta say Steve.
Steve?
Yeah.
I feel
he was crazy.
Yeah, it sounds to me like Benny was putting on a show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Benny. Yeah, as far as intent, no, of course, I'm sure he trained back, trained hard and stuff. Yeah, Benny was just more intense as far as actually on stage antics, But Steve, as far as training style, yeah.
I don't see it offhand.
Maybe he's alive.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Let's see. Let me find my list here. All right. Oh, Andrew Berry has a cool one. He says, how happy was Dave when Dorian turned pro? I was standing behind him, and I didn't even know him at the time. Slapped him on the back and said, congratulations, and he turned around and hugged me.
Me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when you get, I mean, I think getting someone their pro card, believe it or not, is actually more satisfying than a pro win in many ways, you know, because it's, I mean, in a way, these amateur shows are tougher, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they're brutal.
Yeah, they're brutal. And like, that was actually, that was exhilarating for a couple of reasons, because first of all, just to see, I mean, keep in mind, before we started working, you know, Dorian was a very good bodybuilder prior to that. You know, he'd won the junior nationals and all that, and, you know, he's really good.
Yeah.
But to see him, the progression, you know, it was like, I think it was 12th or 13th in North Americans. Then we started working, and, you know, right away, he got second at the USA and then third at the North Americans. And, you know, after North Americans, we're like, all right, maybe we should just, you know, go into off season. We'll resume next year. But then we're like, you know what? Fuck, dude. Nationals just a couple months away. And we're able to pull it off. And I think after that whole year, because keep in mind, first of all, he had to re-qualify for nationals, for national competition. So the first thing he did, he won the Gifted Cup a couple weeks before the USA. Then we did the USA, and then, you know, so at the end of the year, after all these shows, North American, USA, North American, the Gifted Cup, you know, to see him pull it off in nationals, which I do feel the nationals is the most prestigious show. You know, I think because you get in the East Coast guys, and it's just, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's incredible USAs and North Americans, but I think the nationals just seems to be more, you know, kind of more prestigious, I think.
I don't know why, but I agree. Like, I don't know why that is, but it just seems like that's like
I don't know what it is, but it's just, it's the end of the year, and it just seems like,
I think that's why. It's like
I just think usually for the most part, there's just more depth in the classes.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, you see some guys at the USA, I mean, and North Americans too, they're all equal. I mean, they're all fucking competitors. Don't get me wrong, but that was that win was very, that meant a lot. It's cool. You know, we were at a really cool, my wife and I, and we were out there, his girlfriend at the time. And, it was just one of these events that just rolled perfectly. Everything, you know, we had a great time. We celebrated. It's kind of cool too, because we were staying at our Airbnb right down the street. You know, this is Miami, Florida, if you guys don't know. By the way, it's the Nationals. It's not the Miami Nationals. The USA is not Vegas Nationals. It's the fucking USA. The North Americans is the North Americans. It's not Pittsburgh Nationals. For the love of God, please.
Don't worry. I think the people listening to our shows are all day. We know that, Dave. You're preaching to the choir here, but I'm grateful that you cleared that up for us.
That's right. But what was really cool about the Nationals was, you know, in Miami. So right down this, you know, there's like that big waterway, that canal that's a block away. So
I haven't been to this one.
It's really cool. Yeah, and there's like the bridge, you know, that opens up the waterway, and then the cars, right? So it's kind of cool. Between the prejudging and the night show, we're like, fuck. So, you know, he was in the middle. They moved into the middle, so we knew he was going to win. So the Nationals, the prejudging is Friday, and then Saturday's the night show. So we were like cloud nine between smoking weed and stuff like that. And then we looked out the window. It's kind of cool, and we're looking down. It's like we're like 25 stories up. Yeah. With the waterway, and we see these manatees, the Florida manatees.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, they're huge. You know, they're called sea cows. You know, they're huge. You know, and they're just seeing them in the water. It's just the whole event. The whole thing was just awesome. And I do remember Andrew back then. It's just you know, again, you know, every pro card does feel special. You know, there's no doubt. This was a really good one. So yeah, tell Andrew, Andrew, you're listening. Yeah, it's awesome feeling. Of course.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Jeff Riley says, what was your aha moment when you realized that you were onto something, mixing protein sources with your athletes? Is this a year-round thing, off-season, and prep? So first of all, for anybody who hasn't listened to our previous shows and doesn't know Dave, you've, I guess the cat's out of the bag. You mix proteins. I mean, that's in the same meal, right? Is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I'm not a meet your macros guy.
Okay.
So to me, just really quickly, I believe foods behave differently. Chicken, beef, ground turkey, salmon, grass-fed, there's all different digestive rates and simulation rates, and there's different amino acid profiles and signatures as well.
And probably different digestion for each person.
Yeah, what's that?
And probably different digestion for each person too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So when I was younger, I started playing around with it when I was a bodybuilder in the '90s, early '90s, and it just I think initially it was just kind of like, I don't know. Back then we would use canned tuna for fish. That was the big thing. And, I'd be dieting and just I'm like, this kind of these are two different proteins, maybe excuse the expression, you are you. And I was thinking, well, if we combine these two, maybe we'll get some kind of a layered effect, like a sustenance of proteins, if you will, Anyway, I started finding myself like an hour later, I was hungrier with combined proteins than I was with a straight single protein, let's say. Huh. So it dawned to me okay, this is having a metabolic effect,
Yeah.
And I started seeing just more of a density in the tissue. I felt like I was actually retaining more nitrogen in the muscle cell from combining these proteins. So it just kind of stuck with me, and I think one reason, let's say using Dorian as an example, one reason why he went from a heavyweight to super heavyweight, one reason why Adam Young went from a heavyweight to super heavyweight, those guys, for example, is because when we started mixing proteins, and they grew more. They have more volume in the muscles, more density, and I think, gram of protein is not a gram of protein.
Yeah.
If you had someone, okay, well, I meet your macros. Okay, well, I'm going to have 400 grams of protein a day. If you had just egg whites and whey isolate, you'll look like mush. If it was just chicken, it would just be one-dimensional. To me, the muscle changes. I just see there's more of a growth response.
I think one way that I've heard you describe it before was, and maybe it was to me, or maybe I heard you talk about this to someone else, but it was that kind of chicken was the middle of the road. As far as fullness goes, chicken was middle of the road. More if you lean toward fish, egg whites, you end up getting leaner, but you remain flatter. And then with beef, obviously, and there's more going to be more calories in a pound of beef or whatever from fat. So there's that. But then you get that fuller look. I do think there's something to that, man. Different meats work different.
Right, exactly. So a lot of times I'm into let's say combining whitefish with ground beef.
Okay, yeah.
Because we're getting the metabolic momentum, the stimulation from the whitefish. We're getting the density, from the ground beef. Also, I'm very much big into using a lot of fats in the off season and pre-contest. If we're talking about developing a caloric surplus, guys, keep in mind, a gram of carb, gram of fat, gram of carb, gram of protein only has 4 calories.
Yeah.
Fats have 9 calories, So let's say you want to, it's off season for someone. Let's say they don't do well on tons of carbs. They get fat if they're having too many carbs. It's a great way. You can utilize fats. It's a great way, again, to create a metabolic, to create a caloric, surplus. Fats are a great way of establishing that,
Yeah.
And fats behave differently too. Omega-3, omega-6, omega-9, they behave differently.
Yeah.
To me, olive oil is more of a fat burning fat compared to, let's say, almond butter. You know what I mean? There's similarities, the fat spectrum in olive oil and avocado are actually very similar. Avocado is more of a slower fat because, again, there's fiber content to the avocado. With the olive oil, again, olive oil and avocado are very high in omega-9s, by the way.
Okay.
And polysaturated, I should say. That's what olive oil contains, and so does avocado. But they behave differently just because of the surface area. Avocado has fiber. Olive oil doesn't.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's see here.
Protein. I just seen a lot of it just seems like I just see really cool effects metabolically with combining proteins in the same meal, and also from just a growth response. I wish I could have a more scientific nail on how to tell you why.
Yeah.
All I can say is that there are different assimilation rates with proteins, and there are different amino acid profiles. And I guess combining them, for some reason, there's some kind of a catalyst effect metabolically and growing muscle, because when I do it with guys, they grow.
Here's what I've seen, because listening to you, I've tried to, start implementing some of this with some of my guys. And here's one of the things I've noticed is that if you just tell somebody, eat 6 ounces of meat, boom, done. That's a lot different than saying, eat 6 ounces of fish or eat 6 ounces of chicken. And then if you want to start combining those things, like you'll see a response from someone and be like, okay, well, this is how he looks when he eats chicken. And this is how he looks when he eats beef. If I was to say, hey, I like this look, but let's go for a little more fullness, then maybe we could even shift some of that to beef. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that being said, there's some times where I'll start off like the ratio, let's say, because let's say I'll do combinations of ground turkey with salmon, let's say, or chicken with white, like all these different combinations. Sometimes, let's say, if we want to get more of a metabolic effect, the ratio of fish would be higher compared to, let's say, the beef, or let's say the 90-10 ground turkey will be at a higher ratio compared to the fattier salmon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then let's say if I wanted to stabilize things, I would maybe shift the ratio, lower the leaner protein and raise the denser protein.
All right. Let's see here. I got some questions from the Instagram. Let me see if I can pull these up here. Where's this damn question at, Dave? Dave, where's my questions? Okay, here's one of them. Do you believe in periodizing training for bodybuilding? If so, off-season versus prep?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's some guys who do with periodization training. Let's say they do more of a powerlifting segment, sometimes more like traditional sets, and maybe sometimes a segment where it's like you back off the tonnage and you're doing more supersets and drop sets.
Yeah.
Rule of thumb, whether it's pre-contest or off-season, ironically, I don't think that this answers the question. I don't think there should be that much of a training style change in off-season pre-contest. And then I'll get back to periodization. I think your training style will dictate how you look how you look. So very often, a lot of times, I don't know if hopefully this answers the question. Let's say when it's prep, some people are like, okay, well, there's less calories, so I might as well just start, doing more reps and, go just automatically, let's just go lighter. And then the intensity comes down and there's more of a, training quicker between sets and, all that stuff. I think you're going to lose density and volume in your tissue if you do that. Yeah. I think if you the other end of the spectrum, if you're training and you're doing just sets of triples and quadruples and not breaching 6 reps, you're not going to recruit enough muscle fibers to get a complete look to your muscle as well. You know what I mean? So as far as periodization training, period training, when there's more calories, you're most likely going to be stronger. Although I've seen people, ironically, when they're dieting, I've seen some guys actually get stronger during prep. I don't know if they feel lighter and they feel more agile and more explosive, whatever, when they're lighter. But certainly, though, in terms of pay attention to your connective tissue, because if you're in the training style too, let's say if you're grinding, if you're just doing tons of incline pressing, of course I love the compound movements, but if you're feeling tendonitis, or you're feeling like the connective tissue is getting stress in your elbows and your knees and your AC joints or your hip flexors and stuff like that, then you might want to actually back off on some of the tonnage. Because you're obviously stressing your connective tissue. So sometimes you do want to back off. Let's say the following week, maybe you can still do a compound movement, but let's say, don't go as heavy, do more of a strip set, maybe less force reps. But again, for building muscle, again, the variables that we want to play with are always, it's progressive weight resistance, right? It's progressive overload. So we either want to A, do more weight and get the same amount of reps with the same weight, or B, get more reps out of the same weight. Both scenarios, you need to increase intensity to get either more reps or use more weight and get the same reps. And that's how you progress, because your muscles are only going to respond to the stress load you place on them.
Yeah.
Your muscles are very adaptive. So you need to always want to strive for either lifting heavier, keeping the same reps, or getting more reps with the same weight, whilst maintaining good form. And that's going to require more intensity.
Okay.
Does that answer the question? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I've got one more for you. This is a personal question. I wanted to ask you, personal question as in I personally came up with it. you've been doing this for a long time. All right. What in the last, we'll say 3 years has changed about one of your ideas or perspectives on any aspect of bodybuilding? You know, because I feel like we're if you're still in this, if you're still involved, you're still you're always evolving, you're always learning. So what's something that we'll say like the last 3 years, you can even go further if you want, last 4 or 5 years even, that you've found you've changed your mind on something?
Ready? The last week, keeping variables not as simple as possible, but not all of a sudden again making it a peak week for the sake of being a peak, for the sake of a peak week.
So a few years ago, you would do that, huh? You would like add more variables than you felt you needed.
I guess right now, I guess my main thing is wanting to remove. Okay, here's the answer: wanting to remove stress from the prep on both the athlete and coach. What I've really learned the last 3 years is now the desire to get someone ready a couple weeks out is a game changer.
Yeah.
Because then you're in control. You have so much more control. You know what to expect. You know, I'd rather just be like, okay, you know, see you in the morning, scratch your nuts, get a good night's sleep, put your chanclas on, let's go to the venue in the morning. You know, like it should be a very catch up on ESPN. I'll see you in the morning.
Yeah.
I'll look at you at 6 o'clock to see what we got to do. You know, it should be the last week. So I guess the biggest thing that's changed for me is I don't want the athlete being stressed at the end. I don't want to be stressed at the end. I like to try to get some good sleep the last week, and so does the athlete.
Yeah.
It's going to be stressful as it is anyway. So what I've learned is to try to really focus on trying to be ready 2 to 3 calendar weeks out, so that the last week again is just a week of getting better with like a little manipulation at the end in terms of electrolyte manipulation, water, whatever, and just that.
Yeah.
You know, if that sometimes I don't change shit. If that crazy look the 4 or 5 days out, like why not just fucking capture that?
Yeah.
And there's no manipulation going on there. There's no sodium. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's like that. And sometimes it is a very traditional, you know, drying out protocol. But just in general, the last 4 years, I've now really just trying to focus on getting the person ready a couple weeks out. So the last week is just a cruising week or a stabilization week or however you want to call it. Or as I like to call it, another week of just getting better.
Nice. I like it, man. That's all I got for you, Dave. What do you got going on for the rest of the day in quarantine here?
We're gonna go to a concert later. We got a ball game scheduled.
Right.
Big cookout, a community cookout. No, man, I'm just gonna my wife and I are gonna go out. We got some work to do in the backyard.
Nice.
There's the orange tree. We're gonna pull some oranges off, and the avocado tree is starting to do its thing.
Nice.
So we're gonna get some fruit, smoke some pot. I had some phone calls I got to catch up on, some business calls, and that's about it. I'll probably watch Sopranos reruns, smoke more weed, eat, maybe some Breaking Bad reruns, smoke more pot, eat, maybe Pornhub thing in the bathroom real quick. That's about it. Very fancy day.
Have you watched Ozark?
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, I'm into all the. My favorite go-tos are, Sopranos. My favorite movie of all time is Heat. And, Heat and the Town. That's another one. I like gangster movies,
The Town.
And the movie Tom Hardy. My favorite Tom Hardy movie is The Drop.
Okay.
Seen that?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen that
Gangsters in Brooklyn. Badass movie.
Huh.
There's also Gandolfini's last movie, too.
Huh, no kidding.
It's a good movie. What do you got going on?
Just work stuff. That's it. Hanging out with Victoria, and that's about it, man.
Just so you guys know, my wife's name is Victoria, so Scott and I always were like, "How's your Victoria doing?"
Yes. Well, I hope we can get this season. Hopefully, we can salvage it, man. I want to see your guys on stage. Plus, we were gonna hang out. I was gonna come out and hang out at the Indy and shoot some video of you guys. Video of you doing your thing, getting the guys ready and everything. So hopefully we can do that at Chicago or something. That'd be
fingers crossed for Chicago.
All right, that sounds good, man. Guys, if you want to reach out to Dave, I've got his Instagram down in the show notes. Definitely give him a follow. Keep up with everything he's got going on with his guys. Dave, I appreciate your time, man. Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for putting up for my stoned ass today. I know I'm always all over the place, but it's always a fun doing this. It's a passion of mine, and it's always fun doing this with these brothers. So thanks. We'll do it again soon. All right, that sounds good, man. for another episode of Advices Radio and Think Big Bodybuilding Media. I'm Scott McNally with Dave Kalick. We'll see you guys. All right.